This is chapter number 7, Tribes, Nomads and Settled Communities. Tribes, Nomads and Settled Communities. We are talking about 8th to 18th century, that is around 750 to 1750 in between. So two parts are very important here, that is the Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire. So from 1200 to 1556 and then 1556 to 1707, these period, Delhi Sultanate and Mughal Empire period, and in this various changes took place. What happened here? Various kingdoms, various Raj states, they rose and gradually fell down. So arts, craft, production, various art, different type of art, crafts and production activities, they were growing, they were flourishing, advancing in towns and villages. Take it town or villages, they are flourishing, they were flourishing. Along with this, because the political scenario, social values or social society, the economic or economy developments, changes, all these development changes were taking on. And these social changes were not equal. If something is happening here, the other place may have different changes. So this subcontinent, this various parts of this subcontinent, and Pakistan was not there at that time, Bangladesh was not there at that time, it was a very big subcontinent, Upamahadweep. And here it was Varna Vyavastha or caste system. So it was being created, prescribed by whom? This Varna Vyavastha was prescribed by, devised by, you can say patronized by Brahmins. And all the rulers, most of the rulers of large kingdom, they accepted it. That is the Brahmins on the top. The Brahmins, priest, these are of highest Varna. All these religious rituals they will do. Kshatriyas, they were either rulers or warriors. Vaishyas have farmers, the craftspersons, and the traders, that is, working for profit. These are Vaishyas. So farmers, craftsperson, and traders, big farmers, not laborers but farmers. And the Shudras were workers, servants of all the other three caste, upper caste. So Shudras were working for all other upper castes, means Vaishya, Kshatriya and Brahmins. And below that we have Ati Shudra also. Because of this Varna Vyavastha, which was there in most part of the subcontinent, there was kind of difference which was created. The rich became rich, the poor became poor, so the difference between them increased. But when we talk about the Delhi Sultan's era and the Mughals era, this social differences or the hierarchy between social classes, the differences grew further. It increased, it emancipated. So when we talk about these Brahmins creating this Varna Vyavastha, but this was a very huge continent, means subcontinent. So most of them were following this Varna Vyavastha or caste system, but some of them did not follow it. They have their own rules, they have their own places to live. That is, take a group, I am giving an example, take a group, there are various groups, they did not like this Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Varna Vyavastha, or they just denied it. So they were all equal. The differences between Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, it was not like that. They were almost equal. That is, they were There is no higher class or a lower class. This kind of thing was not there. Okay. So these people or these groups which were not following this Varna Vyavastha, and the differences between them were not so vast, and at that time they were called as tribes. Tribes, Janajati. What Vyavastha they were not following? Janajati. Jana means people. Tribes. Jati means say a caste. Tribes. So they were different from others. How they are different? Because as I said, the group, these are all Janjatis. These groups or these Samuh, Janajati. Let me tell you again, this is very important. See, Jan means people. Jati means a group which can be identified with certain culture, certain identification of their way of living. So say you are living, the other person may be your uncle, but the other house may be of any other person. But in this group, that is the tribes, all the people which were there, they have kinship bonds. That is, they were related somewhere with somewhere. Means some was dada, pardada, grandfather, father, or uncle, and all these. Okay. So all these people were related. And how do they get their food? Because most of them, they would live not in the towns and cities. They would live in far off, like I'll tell you about that, desert, etc., forest hills. So first of all, they were doing agriculture, or they were doing hunting, shikar, or gathering, means gathering or collecting food to eat or other stuff. Herders, animals, whichever animals is useful, they were making it domesticated and herding them. So wherever they were living, say they were living in forest or some remote mountain, whatever natural resources they would get, they were using it to the entirety. They were dependent on this and they were using it and saving it also. So these Janjati or these tribes, there are two type of tribes. One are nomadic. Nomadic means changing places every time. They will not be stationary. They are dynamic, moving. But there are certain who won't travel. They would be there for long, stay permanently. And also they have, say, in their area they have land, they have pastures. All these, the tribal group, they controlled by themselves. All these lands and pastures where they live, and they were controlling it by themselves because they are having certain their own rules. All these rules, who is going to get what, who is going to get what. So because on the basis of their rules, they were dividing it also. There are large tribes, big tribes, and they were in the subcontinent, and they lived in where? They lived in forests. They live in hills, desert. So forest, please remember, forest, hills, desert, mountains, or some varied area. So these places, these tribe or large tribes, we understand, used to live. Okay. Now what would happen? Because there are two group of people now. One is following the caste based society, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. This is one society. The other is Janajati, JJ. So there will be, some time they were clashing. But not every time. Why? Because one group is creating something, producing something. The other group is creating and producing something. So they are dependent on each other on their different needs, diverse needs. Because everyone cannot, you have to be dependent on another person or another group, right? So these diverse needs, these different needs, they were dependent on each other. Somewhere there was some problem, but still they were helping and cooperating also. We'll see about that. Now the question comes is, who lives where? And this we are going to see, with the diagram also. See, whatever we have got, the information, say Delhi Sultanate, all the inscriptions we have. For Mughals, we have all the informations in the form of Tawarikh and in the form of the Akbarnama, Jeevani, autobiography, biography, etc. But these tribes, I don't think they were so literate, so they were not writing, or they don't have their writing, they don't want to write, maybe they may be the reason. But they were transferring it through generation, like you are getting it from your father, the father is getting from his father. So it was all oral, means maukhik vachik. By means of saying it is transferring. So all these next generation will be getting the information or the culture through spoken language. And this is how these oral traditions, which were followed by these tribals, the historians are now using it for the tribal histories, right? This is how we know about them. This is how the historians also know about them, through the spoken language. Now, who is living where? Let us start from Punjab. In this Punjab, we have Khokhar tribe. In Punjab, Khokhar tribe, very strong, very influential when 13th and 14th century. Then came Gakhars. They became important now. And you can understand the importance that their chief, Sardar Kamal Khan Gakhar, he was made noble, that is Mansabdar, by Akbar Emperor. Right? Akbar made him as Mansabdar. That is how this was so influential. Gakhar was so influential. What is the name? Kamal Khan Gakhar, KKG. Kamal Khan Gakhar was made the noble Abhijat or Mansabdar. And what about Multan Singh? Multan Singh is not now in India. It is present day Pakistan. So Langhas and Arghuns. These were also famous tribes. Langhas and Arghuns. Baloch also. We also have Balochistan right now. So all these are having Baloch. So this tribe in the northwest, Baloch. So let me show you about these. I talked about Khokhar. Then came Gakhar, Khokhars, Punjab, Kashmir, Gakhar, Punjab, Kashmir, right? Then the Balochis, before that I talked about Arghuns and Langhas in Multan, Sindh. Balochis, of course, the Balochistan area, right now, which we have. And this Baloch tribe was quite a big tribe. It was very big tribe. Actually, they were divided into certain kul or clans. Into different clans they were divided. And each clan, each kul will have a different chief. If I talk about Western Himalayas, there was a very famous tribe, Gaddis, Gaddi, Gaddi. And the main thing was they were a shepherd tribe. Shepherd, they were doing sheep rearing or whichever produced the wool. So shepherd, they were a shepherd tribe, Gaddi, Gadariya, where Western Himalaya. Now coming to the northeastern part, this is northeastern Ahom and Nagas. Ahom and Nagas. We will be talking about Ahom in detail. So Ahoms and Nagas, Balochis here. So Gaddi also we talked about, Western Himalaya, Gaddi, Gadariya. Gaddi, Gadariya. Then we have these Bihar and Jharkhand. Let me take you to Bihar and Jharkhand. Here we have Cheros. This is Chero. If you see here, this is Ahom, this is Chero. So Chero, where Bihar and Jharkhand. Cheros in Bihar and Jharkhand. So just add Bihar and Jharkhand here. So these Cheros, they become so powerful, emerged as a powerful chiefdoms, but they were attacked by and defeated by whom? Raja Man Singh. Raja Man Singh, he was Akbar's famous general. Raja Man Singh, he attacked these Cheros and he defeated them in 1591. 1591, Raja Man Singh, who? Raja Man Singh in 12th century. But, they were not purely defeated or they were subdued. Raja Man Singh, Cheros, though Raja Man Singh defeated Cheros in 1591, but after that, as I said, they were not completely overpowered. Then came Aurangzeb. Aurangzeb, he was under his, Mughalship or Mughal forces, they captured the Chero fortresses, forts, and finally they defeated and subjugated the tribe. Now coming to Mundals and Santhals, they lived in this region, that is same region, but along with Orissa and Bengal you find them. Okay, we are talking about this area only, along you just add Orissa and Bengal also. Now Maharashtra and Karnataka, Maharashtra highlands and Karnataka. So who were there? They were Kolis and Berad. Let me show you here. They are very small. These are Kolis and Berad. Kolis and Berad. Kolis and Berad in Maharashtra and Karnataka. Kolis are also in Gujarat. Kolis, KG, Kolis were also in Gujarat. Coming to south, we have famous Koragas, Vetars and Marwads. Koragas, Vetars and Marwads. Let me show you here. Koragas, Vetars and Marwads. These were three, and they are famous. Other one are also there. You can just have a look. Now coming here, these are very important. These are Bhil. Bhil, Western and Central India. Bhil, Western and Central India. So this is a Bhil tribe. Initially they were tribe, but coming to late 16th century, most of them, they become the agriculturist. They took agriculture as the profession, and even some of them become zamindars. Zamindar means having lot of land. But various Bhil clans, they still remained as hunter and gatherers. Coming to Gonds. Gonds, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh. Who are there? Gonds. We will be talking about them in detail. Ahoms and Gond we will be talking. So Gonds. This is a Gondwana region. Remember one train is also there, Gondwana Express. It goes Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Gond. Now how these nomad mobile people live, that is nomad, means Ghumantu, or they don't stay at one place, they just move from one place to another. So this nomadic pastoralists means they were using this the animals, different animals who are meat rearing or giving the milk products and these pastoral products. So they were getting what from these animals? Milk, cheese, curd, ghee, wool. So all these they were getting from these animals they rear for living, going here and there. So what they would do? Because they were actually moving, but they are settled people also. Means they were not nomads. Settled people are different. So these nomads will do trading with these settled people through the barter system. Barter system is what? That is, these settled people will have cloth, utensils and various other products that may be utilized by the nomadic pastoralist. For example, clothes, utensils. So also the grains, food. So they used to exchange it. But there is no money involved. That is why this is a barter system. They used to exchange stuff rather than using the money. Now coming to Banjaras, the Banjara is also a nomadic and moving tribe. So these are wandering people. So this whole is information about the Banjaras. So Peter Mundy or Mandi you can say, he was himself an English trader, and he came to India during the early 17th century, and he described about these Banjaras. So early 16 means 1610, 1620 like that. So he said that he actually saw the Banjaras. And Banjaras, Tanda. The Tanda group of Banjaras are called Tanda. They are Tanda. So they saw 14,000 oxen, Baal, Sand. So they were carrying grain, and that is wheat and rice. And these are Banjaras. So they would do what? They will take some stuff from one place which is sasta there, and wherever it is expensive they go and sell it. And now from here they take certain thing which is cheap here and expensive somewhere else. This is how they trade. And also these ox, they would use them, and they would leave them once they are stopped for the day, and it will freely graze. Ox will freely graze. These Tandas, let me tell you, these Tandas will be having around 16 to 700 people. Tandas, 16 to 700. And they would travel for 6 to 7 miles, just not more than that. Okay. So now coming to what Banjaras were used for. Banjara were extensively used by two, Alauddin Khilji, Jahangir, because they were actually moving tribe. So, and they have a lot of oxen, so they can transfer the content, that it can be grain, it can be any other thing, food, dalhan, tilhan. So they can transfer it to different places. So that is how they utilize these Banjaras and tell them or ask them or use them, employed them to transport the food grain during the military campaigns. Whenever there is war going on, they were using these Banjaras, and Banjaras were happy to help. Why? Because they were doing it. This is what they do. So in the 1 lakh bullock carrying grain, if you see, they were employing these much of Banjaras here. Okay, this was the scenario. And one more thing is, many pastoral tribes, they used to sell the animals also. Means they don't use them for milk, etc. They would rear them to sell it to the prosperous people who would want, say, meat or eat them. So, and who would want to use them like horses. So all the prosperous or wealthy people, they were sold these animals from various pastoral types. And there were very small peddlers also. And these peddlers were their tribals also, but they were selling gaon to gaon, going town to town or villages to village to sell these ropes, these reeds or straw matting, and these coarse sacks, rassi, the bora, all these they used to sell. Along with this, there is a caste of entertainers. The main job was to entertain, dance, do the acting, drama. So these were entertainers. Circus, Mela, all these you might have heard of. So they will do this. So this is an example of bronze crocodile, Kutia Kond tribe of Odisha. So we will talk about this new caste and hierarchies in the next discussion. Before that, let me reiterate it. So we are discussing the different tribes from 8th to 18th century in Indian subcontinent. So who are the major tribes? All the names are given here. Some of them we are going to talk. Khokars. Khokars in Punjab, they were the main. They were very, very powerful in 13th and 14th century. Then came this is 13th, 14th century I'm talking about. Then Gakhar, they became prominent. You know, Kamal Gaffar, he was made Mansabdar. You know, Khan Gakhar, he was made Mansabdar. And then this Arguns and Langhas, then Baloch, north, west we are talking about. Here we have Western Himalaya, Gaddi Gadariya. Then we have the Nagas and Ahoms in the northeastern area. Nagas and Ahoms. Okay, Ahoms, they came from Myanmar. Now we have Cheros in Bihar, Jharkhand. Mundas and Santals in Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha, Bengal. This whole area, Cheros, Munda, Santhal. Then we have Koli and Berad in Karnataka, Maharashtra. Then we have these Kolis in Gujarat also. Kolis were in Gujarat also. In south, we have Koraga, Vetar and Marwad in south. Then Bhils, very important. These Bhils, and you will find them in the western central India, very important tribe. Then we have Gonds, Gond tribe, that is Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh. Okay. So these are different tribes. So which tribe in the Indian subcontinent where they were living? Now we are talking about changing society, new caste and hierarchies. What does it mean? That what was changing in the society, how the new castes were coming, and what was their levels, what was the hierarchy. So what happened at that time? Previously it was Varna Vyavastha, means the main categorization was Varna Vyavastha. That is, if you are doing these rituals, you are Brahman, then you are warrior, then you are Kshatriya, you are doing trading, merchant, then you are the Vaishyas, and if you are doing all the work for the other three, or your servant, or below level work, that is Ganda Uthana type. So these are Shudras. So Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Inside this, new caste started coming. Smaller castes. Like in Brahman, even in Brahmans, there were new castes coming up, appeared. So various tribes and various social groups. The various tribes and groups, they were taken into this Varna Vyavastha, or you can say they were given a tag of a jati. That okay, you are a jati, we have given you a status of this jati. Who has given you? Who has given? Brahmans have given. Brahmans have given to various tribes and social groups. So now the question will be, what kind of jatis or partition we are talking about? We are talking about, say, smiths, goldsmith, blacksmith, those who are doing the lakdi or woodwork, carpenter, those who are working for construction, masons. Now these three are different from what used to be earlier. It was not falling in Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. So they were called here. That is, professionally, if you see, this smith, professionally, goldsmith or any other smith, it came into being. That is, Indian subcontinent was very big. Somewhere it is some smith. So they were included in certain jatis. And who gave them? Brahman tagged them. Brahman gave them. So previously it was the categorization of four: Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Now the society was divided or organized on the basis of these jatis, not the Varna. Varna was Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Now it was not Varna Vyavastha, but it has started the Jati Vyavastha. That is, in Shudra, if you say some are Dhobi, some are Kurmi, some are Charmakar. So there are different type of categories also, jatis in a jati, in a varna. So the Kshatriyas at this time, in the Kshatriyas, the Rajput became very powerful. We talked about 11th and 12th century, if you remember. So here at this time, 11th, 12th century, Rajput became very powerful. And they were coming from various lineages or various Vansh, dynasty, Hun, like Hunas. They're coming from Hunas. They were coming from Chandelas or Chalukyas. So there were many more of this Rajputs. But some of them were earlier not Rajputs, but earlier they were tribes. So I am saying Rajput were not all the Rajputs, but some of the Rajputs were tribes. Okay, and when they became the ruler, what they did? When they became Rajput, they captured specifically the agriculture area. That is, they you can say annexed or defeated or captured or replaced the older rulers which were taking care of the agriculture areas. I hope you got the idea. So now this area, the forest area basically, because they were tribes, so they wanted that area, they were into agriculture, but now they have become Rajput. So Rajput, they were in this position of ruler. So, and how do they become? Some were the Rajputs, but some became Rajputs from tribes. That is, if you are not a Rajput and you want to become a Rajput, or you are not a Brahman, you want to become a Brahman, then there are Karma Kand, Ashwamedh Yajna, like all these Yajnas were there. So Brahmans will make you whichever caste you want. They were all rituals. So the Kshatriyas who wanted to become Brahman wanted to become this. So tribes, the tribe also wanted to become the ruling class. So tribes wanted to become Rajput, and Brahmans can do it. Brahmans can do just by some puja archana, they can do it. So these tribes, they wanted to become the ruling party or ruling level. Okay, so they wanted to rule. So various tribes, they wanted to rule, but certain tribes, if you see, the Brahmins only allowed the lower caste or lower tribes, or not the higher tribes. Only they allowed higher tribes to rule. Lower tribe they didn't allow. And the other tribes, specifically the Punjab, Sindh and Northwest frontier I am talking about, that is the present day Pakistan. Present day Pakistan, the Punjab, Sindh and Northwest frontier, those tribes, they were taking Islam, or they adopted Islam. Okay, they didn't believe in this Varna Vyavastha, they didn't accept it, so they just took the Islam religion. Okay, they didn't wanted this Varna Vyavastha. So in conclusion, the tribes wanted to be a ruler, but only the specific tribes were given prominence by the Brahmins, not all. And other tribes in this region, which I talked about, they took Islam. They took Islam. And they continue to reject this caste system. They don't want this caste system of specific binding. So they took to the Islam. Islam, there is no caste system. Okay. Now, let me take you to the internals, or a closer look of two of the tribes, the Gonds and the Ahoms. Gonds and the Ahoms. So we'll go to the detail and try to talk about them. Right? So Gonds are here. I told you about the places. Right? So Gonds are in the central part of India. You can say the lower central part, to be very specific. Right? This basically is Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, like, or right side also you see Bihar, all these, central touching area, they were there. Because you cannot just define one place. They were this Gondwana place is a very big place, and this is a forested region. Why forested region? Because they were tribes, and tribes love to be in forest. They want agriculture. They were hunter gatherers, and this Gondwana, where they live, were called Gondwana area. And this Gondwana was nothing but the country inhabited by Gonds. The people who are Gonds, wherever they are living, they are Gondwana, and they were following the shifting cultivation. That is, one place they will go, cut all the trees and burn them. That is, this is called slash and burn type of shifting cultivation. Then when the urvarta or the fertility is not remaining here, they will go to another place, again slash or cut the trees, again burn, have the cultivation, and they will move to another place. So see here, we have slash and burn example. So this is slash and burn or shifting kind of cultivation. So let me show you how they are divided. The Gond tribe, that is the large Gond tribe, they were divided into clans or kul or clans. So there were one Raja or Rai for each clan, means each kul there will be one Raja or one clan. But at this time what was happening, the Delhi Sultanate was declining. So there were different Gond clans, or you can say tribes. Some were very big, very powerful, some were not. So what happened in the Gond region only, the larger or the stronger Gond kingdom, they started to dominate the smaller Gond chiefs. That is, they wanted to dominate it or take control. The powerful one, they wanted to take control of those who are not that powerful. Okay. So the Akbarnama, in the Akbarnama, Abul Fazl has written for Akbar, it is clearly being said that the Gond kingdom, let me give it the specific name is Gadkatanga, GK. Gadkatanga. There were different Gads. This is a common name for Gondwana. So Gadkatanga, that had 70,000 villages. Can you imagine? Gadkatanga was having 70,000 villages. So this is a Gadkatanga. If you want to remember which is this place, if you see there is left Bhopal, the capital of Madhya Pradesh, then you have Jabalpur in between. So this is the region we are talking about. Okay, so this area which is boundary, which is shaded dark yellow, this is the boundary of Gond kingdom. So you have Balaghat here, Jabalpur here, like this. So I'm talking about Gond here. How was the division? You just need to remember this division. So it was a centralized kind of division. Okay, this is Gadkatanga. Just imagine this is some Gond kingdom or Gadkatanga. First thing is, the administration was centralized. It was by some central regime, central king. So it was centralized. So all these kingdoms were divided into Gads. So you have different Gad. If you still go there, you will find the name of the places as Gad. So this whole kingdom were divided into different Gads. First partition is this. Okay. Now every Gad was divided, and every Gad is controlled by certain Gond clan. That is certain kul. So this Gond clan, or that particular area which is called Gad, is again divided into one part, I am saying, of the whole area, that is the Gad, is divided into 84 villages. Okay, you take one of the Gad, divide it into 84 parts, 84 villages, and this is called Chaurasi. That is why it is called Chaurasi. So 84 villages they were divided, and a single Chaurasi part, that is one of the 84 parts, is again divided into 12 more villages. That is called Badhaut. Chaurasi, that is whole kingdom is divided into Gad. Gad is divided into 84 Chaurasi. Chaurasi are 84 villages, and one of the villages of these 84 will be divided into 12 other villages. Okay. So this is how kingdom was made. So see here, there is a picture of Gondwana, and here you see different Gads. Okay. Bhairogad, Chauragad, Bandhargad, these are Gad. Now, when the big state came into being, what will happen? There will be a division of the society. There were social caste difference. Some will become powerful, some will not. Some will become rich, some will not. Okay. So what this social classes has emerged. So Brahmans at this time, they got a lot of land grants, that is money and land, from Gond Rajas, Gond kings. And the Brahmans became very powerful. So when the Brahman became powerful, you know, Brahman can do anything. They can make you Kshatriya, they can make you Brahman, they can make you Shudra. So the Rajputs, these Gond chiefs wanted to be Rajput. They wanted, okay, because they wanted to be a warrior clan, warrior, Varna. So that is how they wanted to become Rajput. So they wanted the help of these Brahmans. For example, I'll give you an example. There was a Gadkatanga king Raja. The Gadkatanga Raja, his name was Aman Das. What was his name? The Gadkatanga Raja was Aman Das. So what he did? He took the upadhi or the title of Sangram Shah. That is, he became from tribe to Rajput. The Amandas, who was previously a Gond tribe, a king or Raja, he became Rajput as the name with Sangram Shah as this name, okay, and his son was Dalpat. His son was Dalpat, and Dalpat got married to Rani Durgavati. Dalpat was married to Rani, means at that time she was princess, Rajkumari, so Rajkumari Durgavati. And Durgavati, who was Durgavati? Durgavati was a Rajput. She was the daughter of Salbahan. Salbahan was the Chandel Rajput Raja of where? Mahoba, okay, Bundelkhand region. So he was Salbahan Chandel Rajput Raja of Mahoba. His daughter Durgavati married Dalpat. Dalpat, who was the son of Sangram Shah. Okay, did you get the network here? Okay. Now Dalpat was the son of Sangram Shah. He died in a very, just after some time. So Rani Durgavati, because she was a Rajput, she was very capable, she was powerful, she is Rani Durgavati. And here we have Sangram Shah. On left you see Sangram Shah. So this is Rani Durgavati, on the right you see. And she was very strong, capable, and she started ruling. She started ruling how? Because his Dalpat and Durgavati have a son. Dalpat and Durgavati have son, which is called as, what was the name? The name is B. Narayan. Their son is called B. Narayan. Dalpat, Durgavati son, B. Narayan. So she started, ruling. So in 1565, what happened? Under the Asaf Khan, that is the Mughal forces, they attacked Gadkatanga. Asaf Khan attacked Gadkatanga. But who was at Gadkatanga? Who is ruling? Rani Durgavati. Rani Durgavati was ruling it. Okay. Now she became, she took this face. She became a warrior. This is Rani Durgavati. Both are Rani Durgavati. One in the, female form, one in the warrior form. Okay. So she actually took that attack and put a strong defense. But finally, like Lakshmibai Rani Jhansi, you have heard that she said, I will not give my Jhansi. She also said, I will not give my Gadkatanga. but ultimately she was defeated. Garkatanga was defeated, and B. Narayan also died after some time. So Garkatanga was a very rich state. It was a rich state. And why this Garkatanga was a rich state? Why? It's a forest area. That region is a forest area. So it has a lot of elephants and all those natural resources also. So the Garkatanga or the tribes, golden tribes, will capture this elephant and will train them and then try to export it to the nearby regimes, emperors, kings, warriors, and the people. So Hathi, they would do this. So Mughal, defeated the Gonds. So what happened? They took one of the part, annexed one of the part, but the other part, means small part they have taken, but the other part they gave it to Chandan Shah. Who was Chandan Shah? If you remember Bir Narayan, Chandan Shah was the uncle of Bir Narayan, Chandan Shah. You can say the Chandan Shah and Dalpat were brothers. But the Marathas and the Bundelas were too strong for these Gonds. So that is how they finally defeated. Now coming to Ahoms. Whenever I say about Ahom, you have to go to the northeast. So Assam and Myanmar, there are two places. Myanmar, today is Burma. Because at that time there were no boundaries. Myanmar and all these were together. So these Myanmar people, they came to this Brahmaputra Valley. I showed you this red line is Brahmaputra. So this from Myanmar people who came to Assamese area, to today's Assamese area, they are Ahoms. They are Ahoms. And at that time, who were ruling there or who were taking care of that place? Bhuiya, the landlords at that Brahmaputra Valley. But Ahom finally subjugated them, suppressed them, these Bhuiyas or landlords. And I'm talking about 16th century. They took over Shutiyas, that is 1523, and also Koch Hajo in 1581. They took or they annexed them or controlled them also. So Bhuiya, then Shutiyas, then Koch Hajo. So it was so special about them. In 1530s, they already have the firearms. Like today we have pistols, etc. These are firearms. So they already have it, the primitive version. And by the 1660s, they become so powerful and sophisticated, they created gunpowder, good quality gunpowder and cannons. That is Barood or Top. The gunpowder and cannons. Okay. So that is how they became so powerful. But they had various invasions. For example, in 1662, Mughal Empire under the leadership of Mir Jumla, he attacked Ahom kingdom. Right? Now, these Ahoms put up brave defense. They gave big defense, but finally they were defeated, even though they were having these firearms, gunpowder and cannons. But if you see Mughal Empire, Delhi and Agra and Northeast is so far off, they couldn't control this place. So the Mughal control did not last long to Ahom regions. Now the Ahom state, it depended upon what? It depended upon forced labor, begar. These were called pikes. So these all are pikes. The founder of Ahom dynasty is Sukhapa. This is the picture of Sukhapa. Ahom dynasty founder is Sukhapa. This is Ahom dynasty. This is the map. These are different buildings and creations. So I was talking about pikes. Pikes were simple. I called you. Say example, I called you and I wanted you to work, but I don't give you money. So this is forced labor. So pikes, forced labor. So Ahom people did what? They did the census or Janaganna of each area, and they ordered them that every area has to send certain pikes depending upon the population on rotation. that today this will come, today from your region pike will come, next day other people will come from this region, pikes. So what they did, there was a certain thing they did that actually created some problem. So these pikes, pikes, some from one place, some 10 will come, some place, some 20 will come. So they were not equal pikes coming. So they wanted equal pikes every time. So they divided, or they transferred the people from one place to another. For example, from one place 10 pikes are coming, from other place 50 pikes are coming. So in order to make them, what is this? 10 plus 50 by 2, that is 30 they wanted. So they shifted 20 from one place to the 10 place. That is, both places now they have 30 and 30. These are now the Kulan clan, which were earlier, it got destroyed, it got broken up, because one clan, some people were in different region, some are in other region. So all the adult people, all the adult males, they have to fight for a home's army whenever there is a war-like situation. So all the adults, they have to go for war. They have to, right? And the war is not going on. So public work, that is irrigation system, dams, public works. Also, they have introduced very good methods of rice cultivation. This also they did, rice cultivation. So the Ahom society, they were divided into clans or khels. They were divided into clans or khel. So you remember the name of khel. So they were not having that much of artisans at that time. That is, those who are those who have skilled workers. So they were getting it from adjoining or neighboring kingdoms. A khel often controlled several villages. So the peasant were given the land from the village community, Gram Sabha. So Gram Sabha will give the peasant or a farmer land, but once it is given, it can't even be taken by the Raja. It can't be even taken by king. So originally these Ahoms, they were only like every other tribes. They were praising, they were worshipping their god, tribal gods, different tribal gods. But in the first half of the 16th century, that is 17th century, that is around 1650, you can understand. So the influence of Brahmins increased here. Brahmins came here by whichever way, the influence became very much. So these Brahmins, they were given land also. The kings were giving lands to Brahmins. So now we have this Sib Singh. The Sib Singh, under his Shasan Kal or reign from 1714 to 1744, under his regime, the Hinduism prospered and it became the main predominant religion of this area. That is why we have in Assam area and nearby you see Hindus. But finally, they also kept the earlier, becoming Hindu and keeping earlier traditions. So it was quite a sophisticated kind of society. They would all praise poets, scholars, or those who are having art form, dance, etc. So all these were given privileges, or land grants were given to specifically poets and scholars. And Buranjis, this was all the historical work they have, Buranjis. So they also translated into what? First in Ahom language and then into Assamese language. Ahom and then Assamese language. Okay. So let us say what we conclude, that there were tribes, all these in between 8th to 18th century we are talking about. One Vyavastha they were not following, and they have a different culture, different kinship kind of bond. Coming to the elsewhere, we are talking about Mongols. So here we have Mongolia. This is a Mongolia, below Russia, above China. Now this region is having one very important tribe. These were pastorals or hunter-gatherers. They were doing this kind of work, and these are called Mongols. This was a tribe, and they were living or inhabited in the grassland, that is steppes of Central Asia. So in 1206, if I talk about, there were Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan as we know it. He did a very good thing. He combined the power of Mongols and Turkish, that is the Ottomans, Mongols and Turkish, And that is how he formed a very powerful military force. They included the part or annexed the part of Russia, Eastern Europe, China, and West Asia. Okay, so this is how they have a very good military and administrative system. So this is all about this chapter. Thank you so much and take care of yourself.